Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Bob Power, and on behalf of OTC Markets, as well as our co-host, Social Suite, we're very pleased you've joined us for our next live presentation from G2 Goldfields, an OTCQX Best 50 company that's a gold exploration and development company with projects in Guyana. Please note you can submit questions in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Dan Noon, CEO and Director of G2 Goldfields, which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol GUYGF and on the TSXV under the symbol GTWO. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks very much, Bob. Yes, I'm Dan Noon. I'm the CEO of G2 Goldfields. We have a high-grade discovery in Guyana. It was discovered in 2019. We put a maiden resource out in April of 2022, and we've been drilling ever since. We've made a new discovery this year adjacent to the original Oko main zone at Gani, and we'll touch on that as we work through this presentation. Okay, just move to the next slide. Okay, there's some forward-looking statements, and there'll be a number of forward-looking statements throughout the presentation. So the key points to take away from G2 currently is that we are high grade, which means a low risk scenario. We consider high grade to be low risk because it reduces the capex that's required to build the mine. It will be reduce the time period for payback, and having high margins allows for all the little errors that do creep in when mines are built. So it's low risk, it's high grade, and then more importantly, it's still growing. So even though we made the discovery in 2019, we continue to grow it to depth at the main zone. We've made a new discovery at Gani, and we also have another 17 kilometres of strike length with numerous targets on, which we'll be drilling as we proceed forward later this year and into next year. So it's very much a growth story, very much still in the discovery phase. So a corporate snapshot here. We have 186 million shares outstanding. We have 200 million, fully diluted. And more importantly, or very importantly, we have 54 million shares owned by insiders. So that's about 33% of the company. We've ourselves put in $6 million into the company to fund it. So very much we are aligned with shareholders. So we consider when you buy shares in G2 Goldfields, you're not just investing in us, you're investing with us. And we take it very seriously how we spend the money. Our cost of discovery for the first 1 million ounces was $5 an ounce. So we think we manage the money well, and our idea is that we want to create as much value as possible for shareholders because we are significant shareholders. Currently, we have $13.8 million in the bank. Our current burn rate is generally about $800,000 a month with 3 rigs drilling. We may get up to 4 rigs at some stages between now and the end of the year, but basically that is generally how it goes at the moment. So we think we're best-in-class operators. We have been successful in Guyana previously. This whole team was the main part, the core of the Guyana Goldfields team, and which was founded by Patrick Sheridan in 1993. So we've had boots on the ground in Guyana since 1993, 30 years. I personally joined Patrick in 2010 in Guyana Goldfields, and we took the Aurora deposit through feasibility to construction, and Torben Michelson was part of that construction team, and Boas Wade, who is now our VP of Exploration, came on to be the head geologist there once the mine started. So a lot of experience in Guyana. It can be a place which is challenging logistically, but we think with the knowledge and the depth of experience that we have down there and the fact that we've proven we can operate down there successfully is very important. And on the ESG front, leading on from our history down in Guyana over the last 30 years, our major shareholder when we ran Guyana Goldfields was the World Bank. So all the processes and procedures which we had in place for the Equator Principles, which we followed with the World Bank, we've transferred across to G2. We've got a very good relationship with the government down here as corporate citizens. Our full team down in Guyana is Guyanese. All our contractors are 100% Guyanese. And we think, part of being in a country is that there must be benefits to that country. And certainly we live that every day down on site. The focus of the company at the moment and where we're moving over the next part of the year is that we have made a high-grade discovery at Oko Main Zone. We've recently done a lot of work on the structural controls of the high-grade mineralisation, the plus-ounce material. We have a program on the Oko Main Zone at the moment focusing on that high-grade within the resource to date, but also extending that down to depth. So we're quite excited about that program. We also are delineating the aerial extent at the moment of the new discovery at Gani. We've only drilled that down to about 200 metres at the deepest to date. So there's a lot of work going on there, and that's quite exciting. We've also got a number of targets along strike, over 17 kilometres. And as I mentioned previously, we've really done a lot of structural studies recently, and we feel that we've generated the blueprint of how we can actually find these areas of the high grade along that whole 20-kilometre strike length. So we're quite excited about what's coming up over the next 6-12 months. There'll be a lot of news and a lot of catalysts to generate release of value into our market, we feel. Where are we in Guyana? Well, Guyana is a country in South America, so it's up on the northeastern tip, next to Brazil and Venezuela. So within Guyana itself, the greenstone belts, which host the majority of the gold mineralisation, is in the north of Guyana, with Georgetown over here on the east coast. Off the coast, ExxonMobil has discovered 10 billion barrels of oil over the last 5 years, which has made a great change to the country as far as revenue for the government. We see this as very much a positive thing. Up until the oil discovery, gold mining was the biggest taxpayer in country. There was a lot of pressure to pay that tax and will be a large taxpayer. That has come off now with most of the revenue coming from oil. But mining is still very important to the country. It provides a lot of jobs, whereas oil doesn't. And so we have a very supportive government in Guyana, and they're also spending a lot of that newfound revenue on infrastructure and moving into the interior. So we think that that great discovery by Exxon will benefit the mining community very much. So where we sit is right in the centre of this greenstone belt in northern Guyana. Historically, the big mines built out here in the last 25 years was Omai, 4 million ounces on the Essequibo River. Obviously, the Aurora deposit, which Guyana Goldfields built, which we were part of, which we then sold to Zijin Mining, is up here in the CUNY. We're in the centre of the area here at the Oko Aramu district, but we also have the historic Peters mine over in the Peruni district. As you can see, we're not far from Georgetown. It's about 100 kilometres as the crow flies. It's about 4 hours travel time to get from Georgetown to site on one of either two well-maintained all-weather roads which go within about 10 kilometres of the project. So infrastructure here is relatively good, way better than it was at Aurora when that was built. So we think the timeline to go to production at the Oko area would be within the next 2 to 3 years. So a bit about Guyana itself. Like I say, this had a massive oil discovery by Exxon in the last 5 years. It is the fastest growing economy or fastest growing GDP in the world last year at 47.5%. It's projected to grow again at 35% this year, and that's assuming $60 barrel oil. It was British Guyana historically was the name. So it's British law, it's English language. We like it a lot because we've found a mine there previously and built one. But now the majors such as Barrick, Newmont, they're all starting to see that there's great potential here for finding high-grade Tier 1 assets outcropping its surface. So it is the other half of the West Africa Shield, which historically has been fantastic over the last 40 years. There's been 300 million ounces discovered over in West Africa. On our side of the Atlantic, there hasn't been as much exploration, and this belt runs all the way from Venezuela down to northern Brazil, and it's very, very much one of the hottest spots in the world for exploration for high-grade deposits currently. So where we are, in the centre of that greenstone belt in northern Guyana, is this area here called the Aramu-Oko district. So we have 28,000 acres, and they're outlined in our claims. To date, we've made the discoveries in red down at the southeastern extent of the district. There was an historic mine, the Aramu mine, which was built up in 1906 by the Scotland brothers. They mined about 6,000 ounces at 14 grams a tonne. There's been historically mining along that whole district over the last 150 years. The original alluvial discoveries were made here in the 1870s. So it is a long history of mineralisation and exploitation. However, we were the first people to ever drill on the Oko claims. So it really is a bit of a unique story in the sense that it's one of these high-grade orogenic deposits. Most of them were discovered back in the early 1900s and are now either deep or large-grade, low-grade open pits, whereas we really have the start of the district. So it's quite unique in this day and age to be able to wander out and find one of these things outcropping right there. This talking about the mining within the district historically. There still is mining in this district today. These are mid-scale mining claims, which are regulated by the government. In the northwest, in the Aramu claims, there's two subcontractors there, which we have. Brazilian subcontractors mining at the Shepherd's Vein and the old Aramu pit. Down in the south, there's other operators mining for our partner, Michael Vieira. He has two other Brazilian groups mining there. So you can see this isn't totally a greenfield site. There is a lot of mineralisation out here. The method of mining is rather artisanal, although they do use excavators. So, but we find them to be exploration explorers and generating geochemical anomalies. So we feel there's a lot of gold to be discovered beneath these surface pits, which have been scattered along this whole 20-kilometre strike. You can see out there at Oko Northwest, that pit there, that runs about 1 gram in the saprolite. So to date, we've always focused on the high grade, but there's also this low grade style of mineralisation, which we feel will, over time, become a valid target for us as well. But we'll focus now in on the Oko main zone and the Gani discovery down the southeast. And this is an aerial view of that. And the red line is the 2 kilometres, which runs from our border to the south with Reunion Gold, who have the Block 4 deposit to the south of us. We have the Gani deposit and the Oko main zone. And then the trend runs off all the way up to Aramu, 17 kilometres away. So as you can see here, there is a bit of disturbance. There has been historic mining. We came in here in 2019 and we drilled our first holes up under the old Oko pit, and that's where we made our discovery with the first hole. So it was a rather quick discovery, but as you can see, the geochemistry of the historic mines in the area certainly led us quickly to where we needed to be. So there's two separate deposits here, as I mentioned. There's the Oko main zone, there's the Gani zone, and then that's our two. Then there's a separate one, Reunion Gold, to the south. But we also have parallel zones out to the east and the west. But our main focus to date has been along this 2 kilometre strike of the Oko main zone and now the Gani zone. So in April of 2022, we put out an initial resource. We put that out not because we finished discovering it, but just to put out that what we have here was more than 1 million ounces, and the grade is quite exceptionally about 9 grams. So we wanted to put that marker out there to show that there is a real deposit here. There will be a mine here one day, and we've been drilling since then. And since then, we've expanded the Oko main zone, but we've also made the discovery at Gani. So at Gani, we've got the Gani main zone, Gani south, and Gani north. So at the moment, we're still really expanding that area. The resource that we put out in April last year was inferred was 974,000 ounces at just over 9 grams a tonne, and 220,000 ounces at 8.5 grams a tonne. So as we continue to drill to depth and define the higher grade, we think we can increase that grade, but certainly increase the number of ounces as we move towards the next resource estimate, which we plan to have out before the end of the year. So that resource, also we did some metallurgy with that, some bottle roll tests. The recoveries are quite high at 98%. We used a 4 gram per tonne cutoff. The resource to date has only been calculated down to 350 metres. And when we did the modelling, we diluted the grade out over 1.5 metres minimum block width in using a minimum 4 grams a tonne. So here's what it looks like in a block model from Leapfrog. The point of this slide is to show that the blue holes are the holes that we've drilled post the resource calculation. There's about 13,000 metres there. You can see we still have high-grade mineralisation, which hasn't been included in the resource yet. I think here we see just over 8 metres at 70 grams a tonne in one of those holes. And the key to this is you can see that there's these planar bodies are continuous at a cutoff of 4 grams a tonne, but within that we do have higher grade shoots, and that's what we spent a good session on about 6 weeks ago, trying to understand where is these high grade shoots and what controls them. And what we've found is we do have these zones of uprising of the mineralizing fluids, which are within the planes of the bodies, and which do have grades greater than an ounce consistently. So that is what we're targeting with the round of drilling at Oko Main Zone at the moment. We're infilling some of these areas where we don't have a lot of drilling, but we have high grade, and then we're projecting them down to plunge, chasing these high grade zones. So we're quite excited about that. We're about 6 holes into that program of chasing the super high grade at the moment. So that news will be coming over the next couple of months, and we think that's quite exciting. And that's one leg of what we're doing. The other second leg of what we're doing is really just stepping out at Ganny and trying to put some parameters around where the mineralisation there is. So to date we have 3 zones: the Ganny South, the Ganny Main Zone, and the Ganny North. The Ganny South and the Ganny Main seem to have a very steep plunge with high grade. The pink dots are all plus 10 grams a tonne. So we're stepping that down. Along this zone here at the Ganny, we have a footwall zone, which averages 4.5 metres at 11.9 grams a tonne. So hence that's high grade again. But within that, in the hanging wall, we have about another 25 metres, which averages about 1 gram. So what we have here is what will be an open pittable resource, although eventually it will go underground with that high grade on the footwall. And here you can also see there's 2 geometries to the mineralisation. One with rather flat line dipping south, which complements the high grade plunging steeply. Here's a cross section of that Ganny mineralisation. You can see the high grade footwall zone, and like I said, that averages 4.5 metres wide, 11.9 grams, and the hanging wall at 1 gram a tonne. So that's the second deposit. Now, the third thing we're doing is also obviously drilling along target, along trend on 17 kilometres, trying to make new discoveries. Because, basically growing the resources that we have is good, adds value, but making new discoveries always makes that quantum, and you get that leap in value. So, the 3 takeaways that we have at the moment that we're focusing on over the next 6 months is that we're high grade. We're drilling high grade at Oko Main Zone and domaining that, so we think we should increase the grade there as well as increase the ounces significantly. We're expanding the mineralisation on the Ganny discovery. We're drilling new targets along trend, and so trying to make those quantum leaps in the value release. And we'll also get an updated mineral resource out before the end of the year. So they are the catalysts near term, which are definitely evaluating. And that is our focus between now and the end of the year. So going over some questions, and the first one is a good one. Is there any geopolitical risk of note to operating in Guyana? And, that's always a good question. And for Guyana, generally, I'd say very low. What we have here is what was a pretty sleepy country until Exxon made that big discovery. When we were here in the early 2000s, and the IFC and the World Bank were our major investors, they ranked Guyana as the poorest country in the hemisphere, along with Haiti. That's not the case anymore. There's more barrels per person in Guyana than any country in the world. And it definitely has the eyeballs of the Western countries of Britain, the USA. They have a big presence there politically and business now. So we think it's a great place to invest. And there's a lot more money coming down from the West to Guyana at the moment. So it's got a very bright future. So I would say the political risk was never very high, but it's reducing on a monthly basis down there. The next question is, can you speak to the infrastructure for the OK project? Yes, I can. I should go back to an earlier slide. I'll see if I can pull that up. What we have is two government maintained roads. One runs to the north of our project and the other runs to the south. I think long-term, the northern road, which is also maintained and upgraded by a logging company and a quarry company out there in laterite, all weather, runs within about 10 k's of our project. We'd need to upgrade an old logging road of about 5 kilometres to basically get access from the north. If you're pushing new road in Guyana, it's generally about $1 million a kilometre. So we won't have to do any of that. We think it's about $200,000 for us to gain access from the north. We already have it from the south. So road-wise, it's well located. When you talk about power, no, we are isolated. Now, people talk about hydro in the Cuyuni or in the Mazarini rivers. We always assume that it's going to be diesel, and just accept that, because there is no power out there yet. In the future, there is great potential for hydro, but in the time frame of when we will or this project would get built, no, it'll be diesel. And to that end, that's why we like the high-grade nature of the deposit, because you can have a smaller plant to produce still large amounts of gold and keep that cost of power down, because it can be significant, certainly with oil prices. Another question here is, do you have an AISC projection for an AISC for the OK projects? Well, not yet. We're still in discovery phase. 43-101 wouldn't allow me to suggest that. We always do the numbers on the back of an envelope just to make sure that we aren't wasting our time, right? So we see this as very high grade. The margin's extremely high. The reason we put out the first resource calculation when we did was basically because our executive chairman had said, when you get past 1 million ounces at greater than 8 grams a tonne, you can put something out, because in Northern Ontario or anywhere in the world, that's a mine. So we think the numbers would be quite low, but we do not have 43-101 compliance studies to talk to that yet. Another good question here. What drilling milestones do you have for the next 12 months? Well, the drilling milestones, I think I sort of touched on them momentarily there. Certainly at the Oko main zone is to domain the super high-grade mineralisation. And what we define that as is the plus ounce material. And we think we are in the process of doing that and taking that down to 600 or 700 metres, which would naturally double the resource we have there to date. At the Gani, which is on the screen at the moment, we'd like to take that down probably to about 300 metres. Once again, defining that high grade in the central and southern part, but also these lower grade plunging zones in the north, which are over a larger area, but generally lower grade. Now that's really just on those two. Just to the north of the Gani Oko main zone is what we call Oko North, and we'll be testing that with some drilling in the near future. And to, once again, we'd like to make another discovery there. We see that main Shear 3 continue along there. There are some old mining pits up there with anomalous gold on either side of those pits. We don't actually get to see what the mineralisation was, but we'll be drilling that soon. But also heading up towards the northwest, up through the Oko northwest and up to the Aramu mining district. We'd like to drill holes up there to see if we can put in more resources as well. And after the recent work we've done on the structural controls, and we've gone up and remapped those areas, we think we have a very good handle on where we can actually find more of this high-grade mineralisation. So that's really the target over the next 6 to 12 months. It's to keep building out what we already have, but also make new discoveries and get that quantum increase in value. Another question here is, when will you be drilling at Birdcage, and what is special about that area? Well, the Birdcage is up where we have the inflection. So the mineralisation date is running from north to south, and then you see the inflection run around to the northwest. So we see that as a natural place where you'd get fluid concentration. It had been mined relatively heavily by the and for alluvial gold by the underlying owner, Michael Vieira, and his crews. We've been doing geophysics up there. We've been mapping with a lot of trenching in that Birdcage area up to Oko Northwest. Mineralisation continues there. We will be drilling that definitely before the end of the year, and hopefully in this third quarter. There's a lot of widespread mineralisation, and so we think we have great potential to hit high-grade mineralisation again. Right there we have the carbonaceous sediments and the iron-rich metavolcanics, both the good hosts that we see at OK Main Zone, Gani and Reunions Block 4 are juxtaposed against each other there. So we see all the right ingredients to find other deposits, and so that's why we like that Birdcage area, and it really is incumbent upon us to get drilling there as soon as we can. And that is the questions to date. Now, if there are any other questions, you can certainly drop them in. One more comment which I will make, and it's a question a lot of people ask us, is why do we really focus on the high grade and not so much the low grade out here? And our belief is really most of these deposits and districts that start in these greenstones have always started with high grade at surface, from Kalgoorlie, Red Lake, Kirkland Lake, whatever you like. And it really is to minimise the capex and to maximise payback and hence lower risk. We think that the high grade is extremely important. Now, obviously, historically in these districts, they start with high grade veins, and then you bring in the lower grade material, expand the plant, and then they'll go back to being high grade veins in their later life, 50, 60 years later. But the key for us at the moment is we believe high grade really is what separates us out from a lot of other discoveries out there, because we can reduce capex significantly here, and by reducing the size of the mine you have to build, it's a lot easier to permit it as well. So you don't have the big tailings facility, all the big waste rock. Here we think we can design something which can be built relatively quickly for low cost, and which will be extremely attractive as a mining proposition for any company. So I think that is where we finish today. Hang on. There's one more question here, and it is: are any samples of in the lab post Brett Davies' visit where you indicated the yes, and that's really the high grade I was referring to at the OK Main Zone. We have been drilling that with 6 holes into that proof of concept drilling program, and those have been at least 4 of those holes have been in the lab by now. So yeah, we're quite excited. So it's for us to be able to domain that high grade and to show where it's going, and then to project it down is really for us, we think is a major step forward. And so yeah, those results should be back with us in a meaningful number of holes over the next couple of months. And so yeah, stay tuned. It's going to be quite exciting, we think. And that's all the questions we have. So thanks very much for joining us. You can go to our webpage at any time to download the latest results and the latest presentations. We always answer the phone if you have any questions. We always like shareholders getting in contact. We like to explain our story. We can talk about it all day. We love our project.